For years, our community garden was just a patch of neglected land behind the clubhouse, a forgotten strip of dirt and weeds where no one thought to plant anything but thorns. That all changed 2 years ago when I proposed creating a therapy garden for residents coping with mental health challenges, disabilities, and trauma. My son Jordan, who has PTSD and mobility issues, found peace and healing there. I worked with local therapists, horticulturists, and disability advocates to design accessible raised beds, sensory plants, quiet meditation spots, and wide paved paths for wheelchairs. The garden quickly became a sanctuary, not just for Jordan, but for many neighbors who'd long suffered in silence. The project was funded through a government grant from the Department of Health and Human Services, a special fund aimed at promoting community mental health initiatives. The grant covered construction, plant care, and an on-site therapist sessions twice a week. Everything was above board, with monthly reports submitted to the grant agency. But then last month, a letter from the HOA board blindsided us. Dear resident, the therapy garden located behind the clubhouse is hereby closed and slated for removal. The space will be repurposed for additional parking and recreational amenities. Please remove any personal items immediately. HOA board. I called the HOA president, Mr. Daniel Briggs, and asked why this was happening. He answered bluntly, "We've had complaints. Some residents say the garden is an eyesore and attracts too many outsiders. Plus, parking is tight, so we're prioritizing vehicles over plants." "But the garden is a vital resource for many residents," I said. "It's federally funded, and the grant requires it remain operational." "We're a private community," Daniel replied. "We make decisions based on what benefits the majority." I was stunned. No prior notice, no meeting, just a unilateral decision that threatened to uproot a lifeline for vulnerable people, my son included. So I did some digging. Turns out several other HOA members had complained that the garden was bringing in strangers and ruining property values. The idea that healing spaces weren't worth their peace and quiet was shocking. Determined to fight, I contacted the government agency overseeing the grant. They confirmed the garden was not only funded, but protected under a federal statute that requires reasonable accommodation of therapeutic facilities in residential areas receiving such support. Armed with that information, I requested an emergency HOA meeting. The room was packed when I arrived. Mr. Briggs looked uncomfortable as I began. "This therapy garden is more than flowers and dirt. It's a federally funded program that improves mental health and accessibility for many residents," I explained. "Removing it not only violates the grant agreement, but harms community members, including my son Jordan, who relies on its calming space to manage his PTSD. One neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, raised her hand. "I admit I was skeptical at first, but my granddaughter with autism found the garden peaceful. I'm sorry for doubting it." Slowly, others nodded. Mr. Briggs shifted in his seat and finally said, "I wasn't aware of the federal involvement or the benefits to residents. I apologize for the confusion." The board voted unanimously to keep the garden intact and work with residents to address parking concerns in a way that doesn't sacrifice essential community resources. Jordan was the first to roll into the garden the next morning. As he touched the soft lavender and smiled, I realized how close we came to losing something irreplaceable. This fight reminded me that sometimes inclusion isn't just about policy. It's about standing up, loud and proud, for the places and people that give us hope.